Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Student Zone session here at Build. I'm really excited for this one. Let's check out the code of conduct as one last reminder before we get started. Basically, let's just be friendly, nice friends in this session. So feel free to engage in the Q&A. We'll be moderating that and answering your questions. But now it is my pleasure to introduce both Scott Hanselman and Kendra Havens, who will be guiding you through your first steps with C#.
Woohoo! All right.
Yay!
So we'll say hi to Kendra. Hi, Kendra.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with everybody.
Oh,
Let's
my
learn some
goodness.
C#.
It's cool. I'm here too. We're learning how to use this new platform. It's very exciting. So I'm here at my place and Kendra's there at yours. And we're going to talk about C#. You work on the Visual Studio team, don't you?
I do. I'm a program manager on .NET and Visual Studio. I've been at Microsoft for almost 4 years. Exciting.
Oh my goodness, that's so good. And I have been here for way too long, and I love C#. C# is my happy language. That's the language of my soul. I love my curly braces.
That is a commitment. Yeah.
It is. Do you think? Why do you think that C# is such a fun language to start with, Kendra?
Oh my gosh, I think it's really all about what everyone has built with it and the history of just how many different apps for how many people and businesses and I guess walks of life that it's touched in so many different ways. We have millions of developers worldwide, and they might have started, oh gosh, like 20 years ago, I guess, is when Visual Studio first came around, and .NET's about 15 years old. So it's you can't walk into like a hardware store without seeing like a VB app, and it's kind of amazing. So I love getting started in C# because you can do so much so quickly with it, I guess.
That is a really great point. Yeah, C# is a really fun language and a fun ecosystem, the .NET ecosystem and all the libraries that you build with C# because you can really make anything. We'll talk about getting started with C#, just the basics. But what's fun about it is that there's people out there, like you said, that have been doing this 10 or 15 years, and they maybe made a Windows app with a button and some text boxes. And they had no idea that they could make an Android app or an iPhone app, or they could control lights with C# or all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah,
so what we
or
want to do
program
today,
like on a Raspberry Pi or like IoT devices, cloud, web apps, mobile. It's all of these things.
Exactly. So what we want to do is talk about how to take your first steps with C#, and also maybe if you're already a C# developer, how you can basically tell people, and maybe your friends, your family, your kids, your relatives, how they can get involved with C# as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring up my my browser here, and you may recognize these selfishly because we
these beautiful people.
What did we do here? What is C#, right? We made a C# 101 series. These are over at the .net site, and there's all kinds of great stuff here that we can look at. These are up on YouTube, right? So you just go to the .net website, and I'll click on one of them as an example. And look at this. We've got what is C#, hello world, the basics of strings, right?
All of the things. So if 30 minutes of Scott and Kendra isn't enough for you, you can go and watch. How long are these? Is it a total of like hours?
Well, that's a really great point. These are actually not too long, but they add up to kind of long, right? Because I think we decided, didn't we, that people don't want to sit there and watch 8 hours of something, but they'll watch, Coffee Break Spanish or something, and they'll do 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there. And we had fun making these in order to teach people everything. And then we actually have an advanced group. What's that?
They're snack sized. You can go down a YouTube hole in them, and they're so short. It's good.
missed opportunity. Snack sized C#. What are we doing?
Oh my God, an alliteration. Ugh. And we call ourselves professionals. What?
Well, one day we'll get it right and we'll do it again. So we've got C# 101. It's a 19-part series, but they're snack size, like you said. We've also got the difference between .NET and C#. This is a really good question, Kendra, because people hear C# and they think that sounds cool, and then they hear .NET and they go, wait a second, what's that? What's the difference between these things?
I'm sorry, I was reading QA. Was that a question directed at me?
No, I'm thinking about what's a good way to explain to people the difference between C# and .NET, because I think people hear both of those things and it's confusing.
Right. Sorry, I'm back. So .NET is basically a development platform. And then the next question is, what is a development platform? And that is a combination of languages and libraries. So C# is one of those languages that .NET covers. Visual Basic is also another language that'll work with all of the .NET frameworks and libraries, as well as F# can call into those as well.
That is a really great point that you're bringing up, because when we say .NET and we say a platform, right, these things sit on top of it. So C# sits on top of it, F#, things like that, right? So this is pretty cool. So when I learn C#, I'm calling APIs, methods, libraries that are the .NET libraries, and those .NET libraries let me run stuff anywhere. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So really later on in here, we've got ASP.NET. Leslie talks about making web pages. So if you learn C# and you know C#, you're going to be enabled to go and make web pages. And then look at this fun stuff. Xamarin doing cross-platform. All of these things kind of open up. Oh, look, Sweeky was actually talking about doing .NET on a Raspberry Pi. Have you ever done that before?
I haven't. I needed a keyboard, and then my partner stole my Raspberry Pi, and yeah, I should.
If I had a nickel for every time my partner stole my Raspberry Pi, it's a huge problem. These fun little devices are always getting picked up because they're so fun to play with, and you can use them to control things like lights.
Yeah, they'd never steal your laptop, but a Raspberry Pi for some reason is okay. It's up for grabs.
Yeah. You know, another way to think about this is if you learn C#, you're effectively learning how to drive a car. And then you can learn to drive different kinds of cars, right? So you don't have to think about C# as being a web pages thing or a Raspberry Pi thing. It's really a flexible environment for you to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of skills that transfer.
So we have some videos that you can watch, and we'd recommend that you go and check those out. But another cool thing that you can do is you can actually go up to Microsoft Docs. And actually, let's do this. If I go up to Microsoft Docs, and this is up at Learn. So we're up at docs.microsoft.com/learn. I just happen to be at the US English version of that. And there's all these learning paths, okay? And there's a lot of them, so it can initially be a little bit overwhelming. You can become certified and stuff, and there's a bunch of Azure in there. And they've got a whole new thing called Learn TV, which is kind of shiny, and all kinds of stuff. What we're going to do, all right, is we're going to hit search, and we're going to do this. We're going to put in C# learning path, okay? And what we're going to do then is find this. Take your first steps with C#. This is pretty cool because, you know, when you think about learning a new language, you're like, what do I got to install, right? I got to do a thing. It's going to be a thing. I'm going to install Visual Studio or install this thing or that thing. With this, you don't have to install anything, do you?
No, it'll all execute right in your browser. And if you guys want to follow along with us, I think Sarah added a link in the chat. So you can open that in a web browser and follow along.
That is a really great point. So you go to docs.microsoft.com/learn. You can go out there and Google with Bing for, /learn, whatever makes you happy. And then when you find this learning path, you see here at the top, it says it'll take about 4 hours, right? Everybody's different. Might take 5, might take 3, but it's not a big deal. It's a place that you can bookmark and you can come back later and finish it. So I'm going to try that and actually hit start. And you'll notice here that I've zoomed in a little bit in my browser. I hit Control+ to make the fonts really big. You want to make sure that your fonts are big enough that you can see where you're going to be coding, and I'm going to show you that. So we talk a little bit about C#, and the goal here is, with all good things, to do hello world, right? Isn't that the thing that you learned? And they say, welcome to computer class, let's say hello world. That's where we all start, isn't it?
Yeah, an essential.
Okay. The essentials. So here's what happens, and this is kind of cool. We're in the browser here, and we're going to say hello world. Now on the right-hand side, it says .NET Editor. That's kind of cool. So we're in a browser. I'm actually in the new Edge. You might be in Chrome. You might even be on a Chromebook. It's okay, because you don't have to download anything. And I like the way they said this here. This is kind of cool. You'll like this, Kendra. Later, you'll graduate to using Visual Studio, right?
I like that. Yeah. So while I'm just kind of learning the really basics, how to write like a single statement or do some basic math or deal with strings a little bit, I can stay in my browser. But then when I get up to the point of where I'm building, I want something with multiple classes and multiple projects, and I want to actually produce like a .exe or something, that's when I can go out to Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code and get started.
Exactly. And right now, they'll start you out with this right here. They'll say, type this code into the editor on the right, right? So you can tell me to do that. And there's 3 ways to do it. I can type it myself. I can copy it and paste it, which is kind of cheating, but I do that anyway for my job. Or I can push run here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the editor. And I'm going to type console. What's going on here, Kendra? Why is it trying to give me spell check? What's this?
Basically, it's spell check, but for code. This is IntelliSense in your browser. It's basically what we call it. So it's trying to guess what you are trying to write based on all of the, I guess, C# types and everything in those frameworks and libraries that we know is a part of .NET. We know you are likely to write in this situation. First one being console, second, write line.
Interesting. So if we look at this, Kendra, why is there a squiggly here? What's going on there?
One of the awesome things about this editor is it is also giving you some syntax analysis and some warnings. So you're missing a semicolon. Got to have those semicolons in C#. End of every statement.
Okay. So then CS 1002, is that like the 1002th error that I could have, or what is going on there?
I guess so. I don't know where our numbering system started, but it's probably the second error you had ever had. We probably started at 1,000.
Probably.
But that's your error code. You can actually Google those or Bing those or whatever, and actually get feedback for what all of those errors mean as well.
That's a good point. They have identifiers. So if you see an error and it gives you that error, you can go and search for that. So I'm going to hit run. And then look, your output is here.
We did it.
Really cool. Yeah. And when you're doing this work, in the browser, you might ask yourself, well, like, who's doing the work? Did the browser do the work? Did someone in the back do the work? At this point, you really don't need to worry about it. It might have been the browser that compiled that, and it might have been something in the cloud. But the thing you want to remember as a new person is that you didn't have to install anything. And I think that's the exciting thing about being able to do C#. But it's interesting. C# is not JavaScript, right? It doesn't usually run in the browser, does it?
No, usually you need some kind of compilation that needs to be installed somewhere in order for it to work.
That is a really good point. That term compile or compilation is something that people need to remember when they are thinking about doing this kind of work. So let's do this. Let me spell console wrong, and I'll hit run. And it's like, oh, look, there's another one. There's another error there. Okay. That code did not tell me what was going on there. I didn't get that error till I hit run, but I actually do see that error here. So I'm getting the error twice. The editor will tell me, and if I choose to ignore it, then the compiler will tell me a little bit later, which is pretty cool, don't you think?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Right. So we'll go ahead and make that a successful thing, and we'll run it, and we'll say cool. We can learn about our error messages. They talk a little bit about that stuff. We can scroll all the way to the down. Don't do this if you're cheating. Don't cheat, right? And then we talk about what's a programming language, right? What's a programming language? What is compilation, like we talked about a little bit? This will walk you through that whole process. It's basically a gentle 3 or 4 hour process to talk about these things. What do you think we should do when we talk about things like classes and object-oriented and operators and statements? I mean, this is all very confusing. It's like I can teach you how to say hola, and then suddenly we're talking in another language. That can be a little overwhelming. How do we teach people this kind of stuff without getting them overwhelmed right off the bat?
Neat. Well, you got to go one step at a time. Was that rhetorical, or did you want me to go?
No, I think it's a good question. I think it's both rhetorical, but it's a question for you and I, because I think when we teach people how to do these things, right? If you've ever seen one of those how to draw There's a really great joke on the internet that says how to draw an owl. And it draws a circle and then another circle. And then it says, draw the rest of the owl. And then there's a perfect owl. And I feel sometimes when we teach programming, it's the same kind of a thing, isn't it?
Definitely. So we want to break it all down into sort of realistic steps that hopefully this tutorial does. So instead of kind of covering it all at once, you can kind of just let it flow past, let it kind of absorb. It might sink in later, but you can keep going and kind of keep working on those incremental statements. So before we get out to classes and object orientation and stuff, we could probably do a little more with strings, and then we could talk about primitive types.
Yeah, and then we can do some Q&A, because we're not going to teach people this stuff in just a few minutes, but we want to teach them how to think about this stuff. And I love that you said the word flow, because you really do have to let this flow over yourself, but you also need to think about what's called the flow of execution, right? Isn't that an important part of any program? You're basically running the program in your own brain. No?
I feel like that was almost a pun, but I'll let it slide.
I think it was. Okay, let's skip past this a little bit and let's do that what you said. Let's go back into something about strings. Can we jump ahead? Are we going to cheat a little bit? Let's see if they mind. I'm going to go ahead and find something about strings. Strings. La la la. How it works. You don't get credit, so if you cheat, you're going to pay the price, my friends. I'm cheating right now because I'm. Oh, here's some strings. Yeah, that's some good. Let's see. Oh, knowledge check. Yeah, this is really cool too, because in the Learn system, they'll actually walk you through like a little bit of a quiz there. They talk about, right, is the compiler in charge of spelling? I don't know about that, right? It converts your code into a format the computer can understand, right? That's kind of cool. We'll see if we can, if they're they're not going to let us skip past there. Oh my goodness. The compiler converts your code. Which of the following things is true? Do you have to make a mistake? Do you have to delete it and start all over again? Oh my goodness, that's probably not a thing, right? I think it's that you need double quotation marks. Yeah. And then what's wrong with this line of code? Oh, I remember this one because I made that mistake at the beginning. Semicolons, the $1 million semicolon.
Yeah, after a while, it just sticks out like a sore thumb.
That's a really good point. When you learn how to do these things, you'll eventually see, just like when you see a misspelled word, you'll say, semicolon, oh, darn it.
Semicolon.
Semicolon.
Curly brace. Curly brace is the other one.
Shake my tiny fist at the semicolon in the air. Absolutely. So this is really great. This talks about values from variables and all things like that. And maybe rather than going through that, let's take a look at some of the great questions that we've got. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got a ton of awesome questions. I've been compiling a few, so if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you some of the popular ones.
Absolutely. Let's do it, Dr. Sarah.
All right. First of all, Kendra, what headphones are those? Everyone
asking the hard questions.
I have no idea. Speaking of stealing things from your partner,
the ones
I'm sorry. Even told me people are probably going to ask you, and because like a YouTuber uses this or something, and I was like, okay, I'll never remember what to say. Here, I'll text him. Sorry.
Another question we have, it's kind of an all-encompassing one, but can C# apps only be run on a desktop app? Can you run them on iOS? What other platforms can you target when you're writing C#?
I can do that one. So yeah, so there's the place. It's actually an interesting question because there's the places that C# is supported, and then there's the places where C# wants to run, where people want C# to run. You can run it on Windows and Mac and Linux. You can run it on Raspberry Pis. You can run it on Apple iPhones. You can run it on Android. You can run it on in the cloud. You can run it on microcontrollers with like stuff like this, the Wilderness Labs Meadow. This is actually C# here. You can run Windows apps. Actually, I think the real question would be, where can't you run C#, Kendra?
Right.
Do we even know? Is there anywhere you can't?
There are some Linux distributions that I don't think we technically compile for, but it's not like it's impossible to compile for them because we are open source. So
that is a very good question. I'm pretty sure you can run it everywhere. So the point there is that once you learn the language, you can really do it anywhere. And that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, another question that we've been getting is around certifications and also other learning resources. So we've been seeing a lot of your great videos, and we noticed that there's this great tutorial and all these docs. But should people be trying to like purchase other types of learning resources around C#? And are there any certifications that they might want to be looking out for?
That is a good question. There are not current C# certifications right now. This is an interesting question because C# is a language that you use to write other stuff with. So you might go and write like a cloud application, and then you'd get certified in that. Or you might become certified in making mobile apps or whatever. So there isn't a language certification. Now, as far as paying for stuff, that's a really interesting question. There's lots of cool things you could pay for. There's Netflix, and then there's other ways to get videos. So if you want to buy a Pluralsight subscription or any of the other many Netflix for programmers type things, you can do that. But I would encourage people to take a look at Learn TV, which is pretty slick. And Learn TV is actually up here. I'll show you. If you go to Microsoft Learn and you go right up here, oops, I will send that live. There we go. Right up here, Learn TV. Right now, we're actually watching Build. So if I click play, I'd end up seeing ourselves. We're getting started with Journey to 1.net and all these other kind of cool .NET related things. So I suspect that we'll have things like our video series up there at some point, as well as additional things. There's lots of great content out there on YouTube, on people's blogs. I think the one way to think about it, and I'd be interested in what Kendra thinks, is the community offers a lot of content for free. You don't need to pay to learn these things. There's no gatekeepers here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say a huge amount of, you can learn a huge amount free for C# especially. And there's so many places that will actually help you learn as you go. There's a lot of open source communities that are really supportive for first-time contributors, if that's what you want to do. And sometimes the best way to learn is solving a real problem. Once you kind of feel like you want to stretch your legs and get out of tutorial mode. I know especially students can feel that way. They feel like their instructor's given them some like arbitrary scenarios or something. And yeah, we have lots of contributors online and lots of people willing to jump on a Discord channel or something and work with people.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Another question that we've been getting is, folks are coming from Python, they're coming from Visual Basic, they're coming from Java. So how hard is it to go from one of those languages, those seem to be the three most popular, into C#?
That's a really good question. I can answer that. I would say I actually started in Java in 1997.
Me too.
I worked at Nike. Worked at Nike on Java, and I started in C before that. So the curly braces are my jam. Like that's my thing, right? So any curly brace related language, if you're cool with a curly brace language, you're probably cool with C#. I would say if you think about, Latin and Spanish and French and German and the way that they're all related, all the curly brace languages kind of relate to each other in a similar way. So would you think that that's a fair statement, Kendra?
I love that analogy. It's the curly brace. It's like Latin. It's the unifier of languages. Yeah, I really like that. I think, C# is object oriented. So if you're coming from any language like that, languages that are don't have like strong types or systems like that, it'll be a bit more of a jump because C# and Java are written to basically scale, to have huge systems associated with them. And some languages like JavaScript not having any types are different. It'll be
They're a little
different
loose,
thing you're learning.
Would you say?
Sorry?
Those languages are, I think that one of the things that I think about is like with C#, it's strict, right? It's kind of like, I like things this way. And with JavaScript, it's more like, it's a string, kind of. I mean, it's string enough.
It might work for now. Yeah.
So speaking of like lots of languages and developing, what is your favorite IDE or editor to develop on, specifically maybe with C#, but also in general? There's a lot of questions about, VS Code versus Visual Studio. Is Visual Studio free? Should I be using one or the other or something else?
Yeah.
Why don't you take that, Kendra?
Okay. So I mean, we're biased. I do work on Visual Studio tooling, so Visual Studio is definitely my favorite. I always recommend having them installed side by side, though. Visual Studio Code is actually really fast on some things. They built a really fast search system. Visual Studio gives you a lot richer context. For a lot of things and a much richer debugger experience, and it has a lot of features that help you massively scale up that are just built in. Like with VS Code, you kind of have to go out of your way to like go and grab the test extension to know that you should add some tests and add frameworks and make sure all of your NuGet packages are installed. And Visual Studio will have all of those templates and those extra testing tools kind of laid out for you. So you can slowly discover how much context you can actually have when you are debugging your app. And that's really valuable, I think, especially for people who are learning. And Visual Studio Community Edition is free. And that is very likely what you might be using if you get a full-time job when you're when you're programming C#. You will probably have Visual Studio, maybe. So you might be a little bit more familiar with the tools that you'd be using.
And is that only on Windows?
Visual Studio is only on Windows. Visual Studio Code is cross-platform. Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase that. There is a version of Visual Studio that's Visual Studio for Mac as well, and it's very different UI. They aren't completely the same, but the richer
Mac-ish.
debugging, yeah.
Yeah, I would add on to
Mac-ish.
that. I would, it's kind of like this. Like you've seen Word on Windows, and it looks like Word on Windows. But then if you look at the Mac version of Word, it's got Mac buttons and Mac style. So Visual Studio for Mac is like that as well. And to kind of agree with Kendra, one way to think about it is that Visual Studio Code is driving a stick shift. And you got to know a lot more stuff because you're driving stick, and you got to shift manually, and you got to learn about how to change your oil and pop your tires. Visual Studio for Windows and Visual Studio for Mac are really driving an automatic, and it does a lot of stuff for you. So you can use both. I think it's healthy to drive stick, but most people prefer an automatic.
Yep. Yeah. And I definitely have both installed side by side. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're fine. One last question. Could you just briefly describe, I mean, you kind of did with the .NET, but C#, and then you say .NET, and it's just so big, and like how do I get started? What?
Sure, I can do that. So if you go up to .NET, if you go out there and search for .NET, or you go to .NET.microsoft.com, and I'll show you the URL up here. You might see it written with a dot in front of it, or you might see it written with the word dot. Either one of them will get you where you want to go. You can go up there and you can read about how to get started. And again, C# is one of the .NET languages, to Kendra's point. So there's C#, there's F#, and there's Visual Basic. And each one has a different style, okay? There's French, there's Spanish, there's German. You should pick the one that makes you happy and the one that feeds your spirit. And the one that we like and the one that makes us happy is C#. It's very curly brace. And then we actually say it right there that it has its roots in the C family, and it will be immediately familiar to C, C++, Java, and JavaScript. So for example, Peter in the Q&A is saying, if you know Java, how easy it is to pick up. The language is easy. Knowing which functions to call might take you a minute, right? You understand the language structure, and then you work your way up from there. Does that help?
That's awesome.
All right.
I really appreciate that. And, there's been a couple other questions. I'm going to sync up with Scott and Kendra afterwards to grab a couple of additional resources, such as what might be a good open source starter. Where might I find one of those? And we'll put them on the GitHub repo. So if you haven't already, make sure that you check out aka.ms/students@build. And additional resources are there already, and we'll be continuing to post more. We also would really love it if you could fill out an anonymous survey. The survey link is in the chat window, and we have a special code COM206. So it's aka.ms/studentzone2020 survey and COM206. This allows us to make sure that we are creating content and delivering content that you care about. So please fill out this anonymous survey so that we can continue to improve the content and the student zone and build year after year. And with that, I really want to thank Scott and Kendra. I know that you both are doing a lot during Build, and I really want to appreciate and thank you for your time during this session.
You're welcome. Always time for students.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.